Hello, and thanks for tuning in. You're listening to the Michael Jacobs Radio Show on the Building Fortunes Radio and the Humongous Radio Network. Thanks again for listening in. The Michael Jacobs Radio Show is featured on Building Fortunes Radio with co-host Peter Mingils and main distinguished host Michael Jacobs. We are here, broadcasting worldwide, online, to help make the world become a better place. Michael Jacobs is famously known as a personal financial strategist and trusted commercial loan specialist. Contact Michael and let him help you with many of your financial strategies. You'll be able to hear the Michael Jacobs Radio Show on the Humongous AM and Humongous FM radio network and on all major platforms, such as Amazon's Audible and Apple Podcasts, Spotify and iHeartRadio, and many of your other favorite podcasts. Share this show with the people that are important to you and let us help you make a difference in your world. Now, on to the Michael Jacobs Radio Show. Take it away, Peter.
Hello, everyone. Peter Mingils here. You are listening to us, yes, on the Michael Jacobs Radio Show by the same domain name, michaeljacobsradioshow.com. We do this as a result of a relationship I had with Michael Jacobs a long time ago. He was always on. I always like to tell the beginning of the relationship because I think that's kind of important. He was always on, probably one of the original people to ever be on the outbreak or the breakout meetings for Manny Lopez. Manny's a really good guy, deals with foster kids as well as he's a business consultant, but he's pretty well known for helping the foster care community with kids as they are exiting out. And I didn't know that much about not Michael Jacobs. I didn't know that much about Manny Lopez. When I first looked at it, I had a customer of ours who was doing some radio shows. She says, "You got to be on this. He's got this great speed networking thing." So reluctantly, after a year or so, I jumped on, and Michael was there as well. I do remember Michael because he had a half an hour or whatever to be able to talk about some of the products that he had. And I was kind of impressed with not only the platform, the speed networking platform, but certainly the idea that, you know what, if I wanted somebody to handle my finances, it would be Michael Jacobs. This guy was into it. So whether CPA-related stuff, tax-related stuff, wealth information-related stuff, Michael was a good guy. You could see he was sincere. And I listened to him many times when I was on the speed networking events. We even did a radio show because I offered everybody a free, 30 or 60-minute interview. Well, that started the relationship. I always had conversations with him. I called him up. We were talking about different things. And as he was planning on kind of getting more exposure, if you will, and building out different things and a lot of cool things happening with the companies that he's working with, I said, well, let's do a radio show, put together the website. That's how the whole michaeljacobsradioshow.com got started. But he's also got Michael J, as in J-A-Y, Jacobs.com, and we put a commercial lending access.com website together for him, as well as all the other things that he's been working on. And I find this topic fascinating and frustrating. And what I mean by that is fascinating because I love the information that he puts in front of me. Frustrating for me personally is that I wish that I would be doing this radio show 30 or 40 years ago, because the information he shares would have made a measurable difference in my financial life for sure, maybe even some of my personal philosophy and regular life changes as well. And plus, it would have probably been able to help me expose my children to help make some better financial options as well. So excited to be here. Frustrated we didn't start 40 years ago. So Michael Jacobs, thanks for being here on your own radio show.
Thank you, Peter. I always appreciate the platform. Little background on me. I have spent the last 25 years working with individuals, families, small, medium, large-size companies in an effort to overcome the huge lack of financial education in this country. I find it interesting because 25 years ago, the huge lack of financial education came because there was a lack of access to the information, right? Maybe I could go to the library and find some books, but for me, schools didn't teach it to me. If your parents aren't wealthy, they can't really teach it to you. So again, where do you go? Now, 25 years later, the huge lack of financial education is still there, but for different reasons. Now, there is so much access to information between the internet, AI, all of it. But if I still don't understand the principles behind it, how do I know if the information is good, bad, or indifferent, correct, misinformation, all this other crap that goes on the internet? So to me, I want for people to understand how money works. More importantly, how we can make money work better for them. So then I get the chance to empower people to assist me in the creation of their financial strategies so that they can retire on their own terms, help support an aging parent, fund the college experience for their kids, be more tax efficient. Wouldn't it be nice to be keeping more of the hard-earned money rather than giving it to the government to mismanage? Making sure that we have the proper protection. Starting a business, being more philanthropic. So those are all the things. But having a plan with no execution is a dream. So I work with over 200 financial companies like BlackRock and Fidelity and AIG and Transamerica and Pacific Life and Global Atlantic, American Funds, the list goes on and on. So today's topic is the triangle of financial stability. In some ways, it's a fancy way of saying the sequence of money. Many a times when I tell people what it is that I do, they automatically jump to stockbroker. And they're, in the back of their mind, they're like, okay, Mike, how do I turn a 9% return into a 12? And of course, there is a time and place for that. But many a times there are financial blind spots that often get overlooked. So to me, whether I'm going to build a house or I'm going to start a business, I always need a good, solid foundation. And to me, that solid foundation is going to start with protecting myself against these blind spots. So imagine the triangle, and on the very base of the triangle is the proper protection. So this is my life insurance, my health insurance, my long-term care, my disability, and my asset protection. So why is this so important? For me, about a year and a half into my financial strategy career, one of my team members that I was helping to train, we were in Baltimore at this time, and her brother was in California. So her brother was a general contractor, and the wife was a school teacher. Again, this is almost 25 years ago. So we go out there, and, the husband and the wife have an idea of what it is they wanted me to help them with, but they had two very different philosophies of how to get there. The wife was all about, this is what we need. How do we get there? Husband was more like, this is what we can afford. How can we structure what we need to fit within our budget? So they had no health insurance. They had only the life insurance that the wife had through work, which was 1 time's income. And at the time, she was making about 35 grand. So in today's dollars, you'd barely be able to pay for the funeral with what they had. So they had no disability. They were severely lacking on the insurance, and they had just started putting some money away for retirement. So the husband was 33, the wife was 30. Young couple, relatively young couple with 3 kids, the oldest of which was 9 years old. So we're going through the finances, and the first thing that I had to do was figure out, is there a way, based on what they're earning, they had a combined income of about $85,000. So out of what they're spending, because California is expensive, out of what they're spending, is there a way to reallocate some money? So we went through, and we agreed on the fact that there wasn't one thing that was more important than the other. So I got them about 75% of, after running the numbers, what it was that they needed. They went through the underwriting process. They went through everything, and I was able to deliver all the policies that we did. So we did the life, we did the health, we did the disability, and we did put some long-term care into place. 3 days after I delivered the last policy, I got a call from them, and the husband had fallen off the 5th story of a building that they were putting up, and the scaffolding basically saved his life. But he had a punctured lung, a broken leg, 3 broken ribs. I mean, this guy looked like he had just come back from a battlefield. And fortunately, we had the health insurance in place, because he wound up being in the ICU for about 2.5 months. He was out of work for about 10 months. So imagine getting that $500,000 bill from the hospital, not having any replacement for his income for 10 months, not to mention the rehab and everything else. Imagine what his future would look like. Meanwhile, this was not necessarily, obviously he hadn't fallen off the 5th story of a building, but if you're a GC and you're actually out there doing the work, you're putting your ability to earn income at risk every day. So, especially early on in my career, that was probably one of the bigger wins that I had, because that really opened my eyes to that value of having the bottom part of that triangle of financial stability in place. So many a times people mistake disability and long-term care. They are 2 very different things designed for 2 different purposes. So the disability is if something happens to me and I can no longer go to work, whether it's for a month, 6 months, a year, God forbid it should be permanent disability, I am replacing my income. Because even though I can't go to work, my bills are not going to stop coming. Now, when I look at long-term care, by long-term care, I can no longer take care of myself. They judge this based on what they call activities of daily living. Can I get in and out of bed? Can I feed myself? Toileting, bathing. 6 activities of daily living. Once I cannot perform 2 out of those 6, by the way, we can also throw cognitive decline in there, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, so on and so forth. So now, God forbid, I need help in that way. Many people are like, Mike, I'm not trying to leave my house. So now I'm going to have home health care come in and help take care of me. Because there may come a point, if I'm fortunate enough to where my family is helping to take care of me, there may come that point where they're going to need help. And I don't want to wind up on the street. They don't want to see me wind up on the street. So that home health care, depending upon where we live, is probably going to range about $5,000 a month. Now, if I need more care and I wind up in an assisted living facility, I'm not quite where I can't take care of myself, but I need a little more help. then the home health care. Now I'm looking at about $9,000 a month. What happens if I need 24-hour care? I don't want to be a burden to my family. I want a private room. Depending upon where I am in the country, I could be looking anywhere $15,000 to $20,000 a month. The average long-term care stay starts at age 73 and runs about 3 years. So imagine if I wind up in an assisted living facility, let's keep my math simple and call it 10 grand a month. That's $120,000 a year. The average stay is 3 years. That is $360,000 current dollars that I would need. How do we think that's going to affect my retirement? The household assets. So now, last but not least, the alligator of life is going to come for all of us. Two entities in this universe undefeated: Father Time, Mother Nature. So not if, but when that happens, are we in a position where we're either going to leave our family in a better position or worse position? My guess is no life insurance, worse position. With the life insurance, not only a better position, but for many families out there, this can be what changes the dynamic generation to generation. Next step in my triangle of financial stability is my emergency fund. I often get asked, Mike, how much should I have in my emergency fund? If I am a W-2 employee, I would venture to say somewhere between 3 and 6 months. But if I am a business owner, self-employed, independent contractor, I'm probably more looking 9 to 12 months of income. I've got to be able to weather the storm. Now comes purposeful investing. My purposeful investing is money that I need to do something, but I should not be going crazy chasing returns. This is my retirement plan. This is my kids' education. This is helping to support an aging parent. This is what I like to call my 5 to 15% money. So again, I need this money to be doing something, but I'm not going crazy chasing the return. Now, in an ideal world, my proper protection, my emergency fund, my purposeful investing, all three of these make up the foundation for my triangle of financial stability. And in an ideal world, I'm able to address all three of these things at the same time. This is not a, one thing first and then the next thing and then the next thing, because I need all three at the same time. Now we get into what I like to call aggressive investing. My aggressive investing, I like to put somewhere in that 15 to 35, 40% return. This is usually where I get the strange looks, like, Mike, where are you going to get that? Interestingly enough, if I am tax efficient and I'm giving the government less money to mismanage, I can actually get about 2/3 of the way to my goal. What do I mean? I have found that anytime the government wants us to do something, they're going to try and make it attractive to lure us in. So let's take oil and gas in a direct participation program. Many a times these oil and gas projects can be $100, $200, $250 million. It's what they call wildcat drilling. I've got a piece of land. I think there's some minerals. I think there's some oil and gas. So there's no guarantee, but I believe that it warrants drilling for, because the returns, while not guaranteed, could be fairly substantial. So the government says, we want for you to provide this investment. We will give you, Mr. or Mrs. Investor, up to a 90% tax deduction. So think about that for a minute. Let's say, for the sake of argument, I am in Silicon Valley. I'm in my mid-20s. I don't own a home. I'm not married. I have no kids. I'm getting murdered in taxes. So if I make six figures and I have $100,000 lying around that I'm looking to invest, if I were to take that $100,000 and invest it into my oil and gas direct participation program, and I come in as a general partner, I'm taking on a fair amount of the risk, but that $90,000 tax deduction, think about this for a minute. The cash equivalent value of my tax deduction, let's assume I'm in a 30% tax bracket, and I am oversimplifying the math here. However, 30% on a $90,000 tax deduction means that I'm getting a $27,000 refund. Meanwhile, my $100,000 is still fully invested. So I have now increased the value of my investment by 27%. Meanwhile, I still have not sold my proverbial widget, which in this case is the ownership in this project, the oil and gas, the mineral rights, depletion, all this other accounting type stuff. So I'm at 27% return without selling the proverbial widget. Not bad, considering all my money is still invested. So now, high risk investing. We're out of the traditional investment game. No longer stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. We're out of that. So I want for you to imagine that 45 years ago, the strange-looking man comes up to you, and he starts talking about this really cool project, some type of computer thingy, and he's thinking about calling it Microsoft. Now, Bill Gates needs $1 million to get Microsoft up and running. But keep in mind that $1 million is essentially research and development, which, by the way, as every investor knows, R&D never actually recoups itself, because it's not designed to generate money. It just gives you the thing that is designed to generate the money. So I give him my $1 million. Now I want for you to imagine, we are 45 years later. What would that $1 million be worth today? Hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. But what was my risk? Most people would say it's the $1 million. However, again, that $1 million was for R&D. We're going to need other money. Am I putting up collateral? Am I taking on legal risk? Am I maybe out of the depths of my understanding? So while I believe that there is a time and place for everything, and that includes my high-risk investing, the question that I ask myself is, would it be a good idea or bad idea for me to use my kids' education fund to fund my high-risk investing? We're going to create two buckets. We're going to have the good bucket and the not good bucket. I'm going to put that one in the not good bucket. I cannot afford the risk on my kids' education fund to put money into something that there's a very good chance I could lose 100% of it. Now it's time to have some fun. We're going to buy an island. We're going to buy a $500,000 car. I'll just be blunt about it and say dumb shit that we know that we shouldn't do. However, we have weathered the storm. We have conquered the battle. We can now afford that type of stuff. Now, if I'm smart about it, I want to buy an island, I'm going to build a business around my island, let the island pay for itself, depreciate the island, and we'll go from there. This would be a very interesting conversation to have with your CPA, which, full disclosure, am not a CPA, nor do I play one on TV. However, from a conceptual standpoint, I find the manipulation of money fascinating, so it's the little things that happen to bring a smile to my face. Now I want for you to imagine this. At the very top of your triangle is a little circle. We talked about building a solid foundation. I'm often fascinated by the psychology of the silly human beings that we are. And I have found that for many, it'd be great if I could just start at the top, bypass this whole structure. But imagine if the very foundation of your triangle of financial stability were built on this circle. Peter, what do you think would happen if the big bad wolf came huffing and puffing and your entire financial household was built on a circle? What happens to the financial household?
It sounds like it's going to be pretty devastating. And as a matter of fact, Michael, I've had to put myself on mute during this whole radio show.
It's going
as I'm breathing,
tumbling down.
Exactly. I've been breathing into a brown paper bag.
So everything that we worked so hard to build just came tumbling down.
Yep.
So I always like to ask people, which do you think makes more sense? Starting at the bottom and building your way to the top? Or starting at the top, having the entire foundation built on the circle with the understanding that it's probably going to come barreling down? So, Peter, which do you think makes more sense?
Can you hear me okay? Because I was talking a little bit earlier. I wasn't sure if you heard me. Oops, can you hear me okay?
Oops, Michael, I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Peter, you still there?
Yep, Peter's here. Can you hear me okay? I am not sure why, Michael, you can't hear me. Michael, can you hear me okay?
Now I can.
Okay, yep, I've been here the whole time. I'm not sure. I muted myself out because I've been breathing into a brown paper bag during most of this radio show. I've been thinking about all the different things that have happened. So I didn't follow your questioning, only because I was trying to unmute myself at the same time and you couldn't hear me. So could you repeat your question one more time, please?
Okay, so in being the silly human beings that we are,
right,
human nature would suggest that we would want to start at the top. So basically bypass the whole process, if you will, have our financial household built on the circle, knowing that if we start out that way and the big bad wolf comes huffing and puffing, our financial household is ultimately going to get blown over. So would it make more sense to start at the bottom and build our way to the top, or start at the top knowing that our financial household is going to come barreling down?
I would say that the most conservative way betting on it would be start on the bottom.
I would agree.
So as an entrepreneur, a lot of entrepreneurs start on the top because they think everything's going to be great, and sometimes it is. But unfortunately, something happens.
Well, this is why the sequence of money is so important.
So can I throw in something, a real life situation that you don't know anything about just yet? It's an event that happened?
Absolutely.
Okay. So Michael and I was telling everyone a little bit earlier that we met on Manny's speed networking events.
Mm-hmm.
There's a gal that's been there many times. Her name is Edie. Rather is her last name. She's an older woman. She's really super smart. She's been schooled in self-development and neuro-linguist psychology and all that sort of stuff. And she's overall a really nice lady. And she's writing a new book, and I've been talking to her about doing some radio shows about being on the new book. So this is July 3rd of this year. So this is Michael, this is not anything other than a real live event that is happening that you don't know about, but I'm going to inform you about it now. So we're talking about it right here on the radio show because it really does fit into everything that you were talking about. So Edie's in her 80s. She's got a few children. One of them, his name is Tori, and Tori Rather is 55. From everything that Edie has told me, successful financially, overall a great guy, lived around the North Carolina area with her, and I think maybe about 20 minutes away, has 3 adult children. I think her son is 20. His son, Tori's son, is 25. He's got 2 really pretty daughters. One of them winds up moving back to Wyoming, where Tori, the 55-year-old son, decides to go visit because he loves Wyoming. And It's 4th of July this year.
Ooh.
He's on a place called Jump Rock, Wyoming, which I know nothing about, but it oversees the Snake River. He jumps into the Snake River, something he's probably done a million times in his lifetime because he loved that area. And this time he doesn't come out of the river. And if you go look on peter.news/Tory, and Tory is Tory, you'll be able to read the article. But here's the thing, Michael. This is a real life situation. Nothing fabricated about any of this. This is this example of your story. Tori was on the top of his game, probably financially set, and probably still doing very well. Jumps into a river. It's 4th of July, celebrating with his family. Never comes out. They still haven't found the body yet. And today is a week plus later. And now what? So let's set aside all of the personal tragedies and challenges of losing your son, your dad, your wife, your husband. But financially, at 55, let me share with you, this guy was not planning on disappearing. No. Top down, using your example, for sure. Now, I'm pretty sure he was, I don't know, so this is me projecting, but I'm pretty sure he was financially responsible in one of many ways, but probably the family was still financially dependent. So I'll let you take that information, not knowing any more than what I just told you, except for this guy who's 55, on top of his world financially, now gone. We take him out of the equation. What's next, Michael? So I'll let you play with that. And I didn't want to distract your thought process during the radio show, but I figured I would interject it at appropriately the right spot. And I think top down, bottom up is probably the appropriate spot.
I mean, without knowing what he has or doesn't have, many times investors will look at things in the form of leverage. If I look at real estate, let's assume for a second he had some real estate. The question would become, does he have rental properties? Are the rental properties still carrying mortgages? Does he have commercial properties? The commercial properties are funded completely different and allow for much more leverage. Was he using his, assuming that he had some stocks, was he using his stocks as collateral potentially for the real estate? Does he have, what type of responsibilities does he have? What does his cash flow look like? Was he relying on these investments to provide his cash flow? Was he retired? Did he have a pension? Did he have life insurance? If he was heavily leveraged, this life insurance could solve that problem. The family could keep the assets and continue to generate the cash flow. If he didn't have life insurance and he was heavily leveraged, what do they have left? It sounds like the kids are probably out of the kids are probably out of college, it sounds like. Were they maybe helping the grandkids? What types of plans did they have for their retirement? Retirement is no longer, I wake up one day, I turn 65, I no longer go to work. Retirement is, I wake up, I do what I want, when I want, because I can. There are literally 20-year-olds who are technically retired that will work, that will continue doing what they're doing every day for the rest of their lives. One of the sideline teams that I help to support in WFG is an Indian family, and their son, 20 years old, him and two of his friends start a company, and I want to say they just sold it to Amazon for $150 million. 11 months they were in business.
Wow.
So in today's world, it is not so cut and dry as far as what is actually going on. And I appreciate you telling me this story because it's going to lend to the next 15 to 20 minutes of what I'm going to talk about. But I think that now would actually be a good time to take our break.
Okay. Let's see. Almost ready. Here we go.
You've been listening to a special broadcast of the Building Fortunes radio show on Building Fortunes Radio and the Humongous Radio Network. If you are interested in the world's best AI receptionist and AI business building platform, you will want to get your AI receptionist from humongous.com. Go to the specials page on humongous.com. That's youmongus.com/specials. Explore how small business owners and major corporations are using Humongous AI receptionists to do everything from answering incoming calls to scheduling appointments and even answering customer service questions. Your AI receptionist can do everything from making sure you never miss a call to texting reminders and follow-ups and even upgrading and closing more sales. Your AI receptionists will help you increase your productivity in just about everything. Building Fortunes Radio suggests you have to check them out on the specials page on humongous.com. That's youmongus.com/specials. You can make your world a better place and help others do the same with the AI receptionists at humongous.com. Now, back to our Building Fortunes radio show. Take it away, Peter.
And we are back. Peter Mingils here with Michael Jacobs on the Michael Jacobs Radio Show. If you go to michaeljacobsradioshow.com, you'll be able to hear this and some of the other ones. And we're starting with this very real life scenario, active situation with someone that both Michael and I know from the Manny Lopez thing. So this is kind of hitting close to home, and it's an evolving situation. And Michael, as you answer that question, just sprinkle that in with, if you will, he has a will or doesn't have a will, and maybe the differences between both. So go ahead.
Okay. So give me 1 second here. I want to continue Tori's story in 5 financial blind spots, because I think this will kind of give some credence to it. So when I look at financial blind spots, we have risk, financial risk, sequential risk, longevity risk, information risk, and risk of the unknown. So if we look at this starting out from a sequential risk, as the name would suggest, the sequence of which things happen. So in the very beginning of Tori's sequence, as he's younger, and he's looking at the triangle of financial stability. To answer your question, the proper protection would incorporate if he has a will versus if he doesn't have a will. So the will is designed for me to be able to say, I want so-and-so to have A, B, and C. A, B, and C could be family heirlooms. It could be the stocks, the bonds, the mutual funds, the real estate, the retirement accounts, the other types of investment accounts. Maybe he owns a business. So the will is going to dictate who gets what. Now the question becomes, did he have a trust? The trust is designed to help carry out the wishes outlined in the will. How were his assets structured? Life insurance is the only vehicle out there that allows us to move money one hand to the next, income tax free. So did he have any life insurance? If he had stocks, did he have a transfer on death? That transfer on death will keep it out of probate. Probate is what we like to call asset prison. As you can imagine, it's very expensive to get assets out of prison. If I don't have a will, now the government's going to come in and dictate who gets what. I am damn sure not working my entire life. It's not bad enough that the government, while I'm alive, is going to tax me when I earn, save, spend, invest, and then die. But then after I'm gone, they're going to dictate where everything that I worked so hard to accumulate, where that's going to go? No, I'm not trying to do that. Now, how do people inherit different assets? Again, not a CPA. However, I do understand the pros and cons from a tax perspective of every solution that I offer. So if my kids are going to inherit the real estate, they get to inherit that at a stepped up basis. Very simply put, if I buy a house for $200,000 when I'm 30 years old, and let's say I live to be 80, which is about average age, over the last 50 years, the value of my house, God willing, has gone up. So if it's worth, say, $750,000 and I bought it for $200,000, my kids will inherit with a cost basis of $750,000. The reason why that's important is if they turn around and sell the house for $750,000, they're not going to pay any capital gains. So it's tax-free to them. However, government hits us when we're dead if we're worth too much money. That $750,000 house, if it's not sitting in a trust somewhere, is now increasing the value of my estate by $750,000. But Mike, the numbers are pretty high right now. You know, government lets us be worth $15 million. Sprinkle in spousal continuance. I could be passing $30 million tax-free to my kids, my grandkids, you know, the church, synagogue, school, wherever I'm sending that money. The problem is, once the current president is out of office, there is a distinct possibility that number will come back down. Because had the current president not been the current president, they were going to take the current allowance, which was $14 million, and bring it back down to $6 million. So now, after spousal continuance, $12 million versus $30 million. We have to understand that this country has been bankrupt for the better part of 50 years. So any opportunity to bring in more capital for the government to mismanage is going to happen. So again, all of this falls into what I like to call sequential risk. Anytime I'm looking at an investment, I also look at exit strategy. Why am I doing the investment? What do I want to get out of it? Is it structured properly? So now we have financial risk. Like we were saying, if he was fairly well off, I'd be curious to see what types of investments he had. Was he all in on a specific type of investment? So now we have financial risk. Because if I'm all in on AI, and you and I have had this conversation a few times now on previous episodes that I invite all of you to go and listen to, AI is just another bubble to me. AI is, in my opinion, not too far off from bursting. The way that it was put together, in many ways, I feel, and again, I am not tech guru, I am not on the forefront of AI. I do have projects that I'm working on that are associated to AI, so I'm learning more and more. However, structurally, it was kind of built on, it's almost the equivalent to me of having my triangle financial stability built on the circle. Longevity risk. In reference to Tory, this is somewhat ironic. You figure in this country, there are currently 51,000 people that are 105 years old or older. So imagine we go back 50 years ago, the mortality rate, the average age that people live, for men was like 59, women is 62. Now it's 79 for men and about 83 for women. So those last 20, 25 years of their life, it's not like they're going to get less expensive to live. They're going to get more expensive. Inflation, rising cost of living. Right now, we're in the third lowest tax environment that we've been in the last 100 years. What happens, not if, but when taxes go up? Now at 54, 55 years old, you said it, he didn't think he was going to wake up that day and, jump into the river and never be found. So boiling back to that question of the life insurance and other types of protection, what type of tax planning did he have? Was it something that he was thinking to himself, you know what, I'm starting to reach that age where I got to start thinking about some of this stuff? Many a times, being the silly human beings that we are, we get into our comfort zone. So if he wasn't stressed financially because of what he had going on, he may not have been thinking that far into the future. Now, I'm not saying one way or the other whether he did or he didn't, but when we're looking at how would this look like in different situations, I'm trying to give an idea from different types of situations. So now, information risk. Like I mentioned before, 25 years ago, huge lack of financial education came from a lack of access to information. Now we're overloaded with it. I have said many times in the past, I personally believe right now we are living in a society where we are at the mercy of the intent of the content on the internet. So without knowing whether or not he had a quote-unquote guy that he was working with, sometimes our ego gets in the way, and we're like, I could do this myself. I'll go take all that information. And more power to you if you can do that, but I would say the information that you're basing your decisions on, where is that information coming from? Is somebody that's putting out that information, are they doing it because they want you to take a specific action? I boil this back to my industry. 90% of all insurance agents don't carry a securities license, and 90% of all securities brokers don't carry an insurance license. So many a times you'll hear the security side of the fence have somewhat of a dismay for life insurance. So I would ask the question, how much time did they invest into understanding something that they cannot sell because they're not licensed? Why do wealthy people look at life insurance as an investment? Non-wealthy people view it as an expense. Part of that boils down to the difference between permanent life insurance, your whole life, your universal life, your variable universal life, your indexed universal life, versus term. Term, pure protection, no cash value, least expensive. As the name would suggest, the alligator of life doesn't come and swallow me off my lily pad. During my term, now the insurance company keeps all my money. I may still need more coverage. Now I'm older, so it's more expensive, even if I'm in great health. Now I got to requalify medically. Versus my permanent insurance with cash value, money's protected from creditors, money's protected from my future X. 60% of this country winds up in divorce. I literally have the opportunity to become my own bank. And my death benefit is the only vehicle out there that allows us to move money one hand to the next, income tax free. So what I can do with it while I'm alive is quite elegant, versus the only way my beneficiaries get anything is if I die on somebody else's time frame, which I'm not trying to do, right? So in many ways, this comes back to the sequence of money and the risk that we take. Now, where Tory falls in is the risk of the unknown. I shudder to think what would happen if I just went up to somebody randomly and asked them, when are you going to die? They're going to look at me, like I'm Bart Simpson with a fish coming out of my head. What do you mean? How do I know? Okay. How do you know? None of us know. So the questions that I would ask, since right now we are the vehicle that goes to work, earns the income to pay for the house, the cars, and the dog, so that the bills can be paid. What would happen if that vehicle were to become disabled or disappear? can we agree that that vehicle needs to be replaced? So this is where having something like long-term care, so the vehicle is disabled. What if I live to be 105? What can I do? What can I put in place that will guarantee that I do not outlive my money? I may outlive the value of my money because, let's face it, courtesy of inflation, $5,000 a month in today's world next year is going to be worth less. 5 years is worth 5 years less. 10 years, it's 10 years less. 15 years from now, it's worth about half as much. So now what do I do? So between sequential risk, financial risk, longevity risk, information risk, risk of the unknown, to me, this is why I would want to have a guy that I'm working with to help me through all of this stuff. You would think that life would get easier with the more money that you have. And in many ways it does, because I'm not having to worry about how I'm going to fund my kids' education. I'm not having to worry about, do I have enough in my emergency fund? I'm not having to go to a job every day that I hate because I'm so reliant on that money. By the way, they're dictating to me what my time is worth. So but now my life gets more complicated. Like I said, we get taxed when we earn, save, spend, invest. Then they hit you the hardest when you're dead. So above and beyond not wanting to leave my family in a worse situation, do I have everything structured properly? When do I start working on making sure that I have this stuff planned properly? Do I have a revocable trust, an irrevocable trust? My irrevocable trust can be a better asset for guarding against taxes, but I'm giving up control. Am I that guy or woman that's been married 4 times? I would not want to have an irrevocable trust if I'm that person that's gotten divorced 4 times. That is a nightmare. Am I a business owner? How am I hiding my assets? There's an old saying that says, own nothing, control everything. So these are all the things that we need to be paying attention to. And in an ideal world, we'd be starting to pay attention as soon as possible. People think, I'm only 20. What am I even thinking about? I'm trying to get out of college. So now I get out of college and I'm, in today's world, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Now I'm trying to get out of debt. So this kind of boils down into the sequential risk. If then. But I digress, and I can go on for days. So I say, let's call the ball.
Well,
so Peter, do you have any
great information.
Questions
No,
for me?
Great information. Can you hear me okay? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So I love this conversation, but hate this conversation because it makes us face questions that we probably don't want to face and make decisions on things we'd rather not. And it's probably part of the human nature of whatever that might be, however you want to describe it. But in the real life example that we just gave with Tori Rather, Raether spelled Raether. You should say prayers maybe if you're the praying type, for him and his family, and Edie as well. And Edie's going to be on this radio show talking about a whole bunch of stuff, and inevitably talking about this story. Is a real-life reminder of the stuff that happens in real life. That may not happen in large numbers, but, you know, Michael, that's the calculated risk that people take when they live this life. And tough decisions, really tough conversations. And I know I mentioned a little bit earlier that I wish I had you on this radio show 40 years ago. I retract that statement because 40 years ago, you weren't doing what you were doing. You'd probably give me shitty advice. 40 years ago.
40 years ago, I was just starting high school, but...
yeah, you'd probably give me crappy advice. So it would be better to do this 25 years ago when you were getting involved in this, or maybe even 20 years ago, because maybe even when you first got started, you didn't know all the stuff that you know. So
well, as you know, I came from the screen printing, embroidery, and had specialty background. So 25 years ago, I was definitely not the person you'd want to talk to. But you know, to Tori's point, a very good friend of mine, 62 years old, he's been a client of mine for a better part of 20 years, and 2.5 years ago, he finds out that he has bladder cancer. So ultimately, they got to remove part of his bladder. Well, about a month and a half ago, this was right around the time when I was going to be doing the financial seminar on how to be prepared for special needs kids and adults. Mm-hmm. And we were going to host it out of his shipping and packaging store. And I get a call that this is the night before that we're going to do this, that he's in the hospital. He wasn't feeling right. He was stressed out. You know, all the blood was rushing to his head. He gets home from the shop and tells his wife that, hey, I think I need to go to the hospital. So they take him to the hospital. They run some tests, and they decide they're going to put I guess it's called a shunt for his heart. Okay, they ran some more tests, and 2 days later, he's having triple bypass surgery. They had to crack open his chest. You know, talk about prayers out to him. So anyway, after being in the hospital for 3 weeks, when they finally let him go, above and beyond the heart issue that they had, apparently they had to go in and do something for his intestines. 62 years old. I mean, one of the nicest people you will ever meet in your entire life. But it's almost like, if you believe in the karma dog, like, who did he bite in his previous lifetime? Because God knows he does not deserve what he's having to go through now. Fortunately, he was prepared for it all. Otherwise, this would be the situation from 20 plus years ago with the husband and wife, the contractor and the school teacher. So right at the time where he's getting ready to retire, all of this happens. So sequential risk is...
Yeah, I mean, it happens to everybody. The headlines are the headlines.
Yep.
Just, I guess, yesterday, Lindsey Graham passed away suddenly.
Yeah.
So the senator from South Carolina, you know, and he was just on a plane in the Ukraine doing his thing, probably still at the top of his game mentally, certainly not physically at 71, but certainly did not appear as if he had any issues, and all of a sudden he's done. Now, who knows what happened? We don't know any of the details, but those are the people that make the headlines. It doesn't happen every day to everybody, but what are you going to do?
No, but think about it. A couple of weeks ago, Alan Greenspan passes away at 100.
Mm-hmm.
You think he ever thought he was going to live to be 100 years old?
Never. No.
So,
Wow.
yeah,
Figure.
I mean, it's all, if we're fortunate enough to speak to somebody where we can ask the question, hey, how can I be better prepared for, whatever it may be? That's how the wealthy stay wealthy, because they are prepared for the inevitable. And granted, they have the resources in which to act on whatever plan needs to be put in place. But not everybody is so fortunate. But for when we're young, for a less expensive amount of money, we can put those resources into place. And I'll finish on this. When we talked before, 2/3 of all Americans are going to need some type of long-term care, and the average age starts at 73. 1/3 of that 70% start prior to age 65.
Wow. Wow. These are all very interesting conversations.
Yeah.
So this is why people want to listen in and check in and listen in on a regular basis to the michaeljacobsradioshow.com radio show series. We've covered some interesting topics over the last couple of months on this kind of a concept, and it makes you think. And it may not be the topic specifically that might apply to you, but it makes you think about your own situation. And for Michael, for those people that want to use you, get some guidance, let's give them the Michael Jacobs radio show commercial. How do people find you?
So the best way to get a hold of me is the cell phone, whether you text or you call, 443-506-3841. I warn you early, I can go for days, so sometimes you got to reel me back in. But I do find the manipulation of money fascinating, and would absolutely love to have that conversation and see whether or not there's any way that I can help.
It could be some of the...
we started the conversation in reference to Manny Lopez, so we'll finish it that way, because Manny always talks about serving your way to success, and I do take that pretty seriously.
Perfect. So for anybody that's interested, I'll make sure that this phone number is located in the notes for what we're referencing. And I want to say, Michael, thank you for spending your time here, sharing some information. For those people like me that probably need to hear this message a little bit more often, and earlier, this is perfect. So make sure you share it with other people. So there's easy ways to share the michaeljacobsradioshow.com website and the different things that he does on social media whenever he posts on social media. So make sure you check him out. And it's Michael J. Jacobs on LinkedIn, Michael J-A-Y Jacobs on LinkedIn. So you can actually reach out to him over there and get some more information too. But Michael, thanks for being here. The most important thing to me is not what we put up on a website, not necessarily what you put on a LinkedIn. It's that personal phone call you can make to Michael to have that conversation that can handle your specific situation. So Michael, thanks for being here. And we're going to catch everybody next time on Michael Jacobs Radio Show.
Wow. You've been listening to the Michael Jacobs Radio Show on Building Fortunes Radio and the Humongous Radio Network. If you want to listen to this again or tune in to the other radio shows, you'll be able to hear the Michael Jacobs Radio Show on the Humongous AM and Humongous FM Radio Network and on all major platforms such as Amazon's Audible and Apple Podcasts, Spotify and iHeartRadio, and on many of your favorite podcasts. Michael, Peter, and I are glad you listened in. Call Michael Jacobs or contact him through the michaeljacobsradioshow.com website and see if Michael can help you with your personal financial strategies and make sure you avoid any financial blind spots. Share this show with the people that are important to you. Thanks again for listening in. And now, go make the world a better place.